Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. This week, we're recapping the Chicago Street Course and previewing Atlanta, and of course, we'll answer our question of the week and see what else comes up during the podcast. Once again, thank you all for listening. Like, share, subscribe, listen, tell all your friends, even if they aren't NASCAR fans, and see if they'll get into the show. It's still receiving positive feedback, and that's one reason why I do it. I also do it because I love NASCAR and really enjoy talking about it. So thank you all once again, and let's get this episode underway. Before we get into the actual race part of the weekend, I just wanted to say that this Chicago Street Course was a huge win for NASCAR. If you all have seen the TV ratings, they were NBC's most viewed race in 6 years. And that's just the beginning of how big of a weekend it was. Fans everywhere. I saw a tweet from NASCAR. They went around and asked fans, how many races have you been to? And overwhelmingly, this was people's first race and that lived in Chicago and that traveled. And so they're making new fans, and they're growing the sport, and that's definitely a huge reason as to why I think this will be back. And, you can go other places other than Chicago. Chicago was awesome. I'd say, it was a 3-year contract that they signed, so it would not shock me if they went back the last 2 remaining years on that. But after that, you can go other places. Or you can add another street course every year, or I don't know what dates you take away. Probably a road course you take away. But I just wanted to start off by saying that I'm a huge proponent for this. I had my questions going into it. I didn't know if it would make a joke of the sport. Just people, the drivers just going crazy and wrecking each other on restarts and stuff, but I think the single file restarts help with that, and that was due to weather. I think that was a great call. I think you might want to do that at the Indy Road course later in the year, and even at COTA if they go back next year. I think the single file restarts will make it a lot less crazy, which for the drivers is greater, but as TV, not as much antics. Which honestly is fine with me when you're considering, when you're trying to have a real winner of a race. I think, only thing, I'm going to contradict myself here, because I have a probably unpopular opinion. I think that if they were to have done double file restarts the whole way, that SVG doesn't win. I think that he would have eventually got the bumper from somebody. I could be wrong here, and I'm not a SVG hater. I think it was awesome that he won in his first start. But at the same time, when you're double file restarts with these guys that do it all the time, and everybody has seen how aggressive they get on a normal restart, I have my questions. But the drivers seem to like the single file restarts, and that's all that really matters here. There's a less crazy restarts, but there's still some passing. There were still some passing zones, and that's another thing about the street course is the driver said there's a lot more passing zones than they thought, and I think that made for a better race also. You had passing. You had some wrecks, but it wasn't just a single file fest the whole way, and that was really good to see. Now, on to the racing part. Denny Hamlin got the pole, which was his second road course pole in a row. Had one at Sonoma also. And they started in wet conditions. It came a monsoon before the green flag, the most rain Chicago had had in a day in a long time. And so they started in wet weather conditions. They had wet weather tires on the cars, and we went green. And Denny doesn't have very much experience with the wet roads, and a couple turns in, he's off the track and loses the lead and falls back to 11th or 12th and was never really able to go anywhere else but 11th and 12th all day long, and that kind of pushed him back in the track position. And then it seemed like right after that happened, Brad Keselowski gets sandwiched in between the two legacy cars, which is Eric Jones and Noah Gragson. It just looked like Eric Jones got in way too hot into the turn 6 tire barriers and ended up going into them and collecting Brad K and Noah, but no damage for anybody. And that was another thing, these tire barriers, and I want to touch on. Kyle Busch hit these tire barriers right after that, and he hit them going the fastest of anybody and still barely had minimal damage, and that's crazy. The tire barriers were a great call. They did a great job. But Kyle Busch ends up, from being stuck under the tire barriers a lap down, to finishing, I think, in the top 5, top 10. And some of that was due to pit strategy. But Kyle Busch with another impressive run. I think, I still think you got to take this guy serious as a championship contender. I said that a couple weeks ago. Nothing has changed in that regard, in my opinion. Christopher Bell, after the Kyle Busch incident, Christopher Bell makes one of the few passes for the lead of the day. He passed Tyler Reddick for the lead. Reddick had assumed the lead when Denny kind of got off track a little ways. Christopher Bell really was the person that dominated most of this race, and we'll get into why he didn't win later on, but he really had a good race going. He was way out in front of everybody there for a while. And after Christopher passes Tyler for the lead, it shows Noah Gragson in the turn 6 tire barriers again. And I think the turn 6 tire barriers just love Baconators, because Noah's Baconator car spent most of the day in the tire barriers, and I hated that for him. Such a nice guy. He's had such a rough year. We've said that many times on here. Legacy, man, just they can't get it figured out. Their last year at Chevrolet before they switched to Toyota, I look for them to be on the rebound next year. And Christopher Bell wins the first stage pretty dominantly. And at road courses now, we award the stage points for the top 10, but no caution. So no caution came out. And then Alex Bowman and Corey LaJoie had a good aggressive battle, good racing from those guys for 13th. I think they're fighting for 13th position. I thought there was a point where they were both going to wreck. Corey got by him there, and it's just a very good battle. It seemed like the tire barriers were, the hardest place in turn 6. The tire barriers were the hardest part of the track, because that's where most of the people slid under them. And I will say, racing this track on iRacing, that was the part I struggled with the most also. So I thought that was going to be a very hard corner to make. It's hard to judge where to brake at and where to not overbrake and slide, or lose a bunch of speed. And these guys, they tried to they were in the same predicament, trying to figure out where to brake. A lot of them overstepped their boundaries and ended up in the barriers, and Joey Logano was just another one of those people. And Jensen Button, trying to come to pit road, gets spun. And I thought this was interesting. He was trying to pit under green, and he just went too wide and ended up getting spun. I'm not sure whose nose he spun off. I think it was he spun off Christopher Bell's front end there and spun him into pit road, and then Button almost collected Logano coming in as well, but didn't. Avoided problems. I mean, he lost some track position due to the spin, but he was able to collect it back up, no damage, and continue. And while all that was going on, shortly after, Ryan Blaney, he hasn't been that much of a factor on these road courses this year. It seems like early in his career, he was pretty good at road courses. I know he won one Roval race some say it was by luck, which it kind of was. The front two ended up taking each other out and he won. But I remember him running better at road courses, and this year has just been not something to brag about for him on road courses, which is strange because he's ran well a lot of other places and done solid. But road courses not very good for Penske in general this year. Then we go from wet weather tires to dry weather tires. The track started to dry up with the drivers putting the laps down. And, Chase Elliott was one of the first people that switched to slick tires, what they call them, the dry weathers, and ended up wrecking. He was the first one to wreck on the new tires, and he didn't really smack the wall. He ran into the wall, was able to get it going again. He said, and the thing about what shocked me about him wrecking is he said he wasn't even pushing that hard when he came out of pit road there, and just sent it off into the wall. He was already in a backup car due to wrecking and qualifying. But as we all know, he found a way to get a top 3 finish out of the day somehow. He was in the wall a couple times this weekend, still comes out third. So that was a good run for Chase. And for the third time of the day, Noah Gragson into the tire barriers so the tire barriers can eat another Baconator. I've wrote down in my notes, was hoping for a good day for him. I thought this could be a decent day for Noah. I thought he could get a top 15, top 20. Just wasn't there for him. You feel bad for him, honestly. This week at Atlanta, though, I think he's going to be a factor. He was a factor in Talladega. Had the lead with like 5 to go before getting wrecked. I can see Noah being in contention late, and that's going to shock some people when he's up there. And it's like, oh my, what if he wins? You talk about the playoff picture being crazy. If Noah Gragson were to win this race at Atlanta this weekend, that would be definitely wild. Shortly after Noah gets in the barriers for the third time, Denny Hamlin gets in a wet spot, loses control, and spins Alex Bowman. And I hated to see this because I like these two guys. I saw in an interview before the race on Sunday, Alex Bowman was talking about how he still feels bad for wrecking Denny unintentionally at Martinsville. In I think it was 2021, wrecked him for the win, and Alex said he wishes he wouldn't have done that and still regrets it. So, they like they might have mended a couple fences and then. But I think Alex knows, and you can tell by watching on TV, that this wasn't on purpose. It wasn't like Denny purposely hooked him. He just got in too deep, lost control, almost spun himself out too, but ended up only spinning Bowman, and that brings out a caution because Bowman couldn't get fired up too well. And Daniel Suarez then smacks the wall on a restart. He looked fast in practice and qualifying, and I'm still shocked he didn't have a better day. But smacks the wall on a restart, pretty much ruins his day. And then tied in with the spinning, Alex Bowman, his car just quits on him and said it was stuck in oil conservation mode, I think. And I'm not a mechanic or a car guy, so I'm not sure what that means. But the way I understand it, his car got stuck in a mode that it wasn't supposed to, and he couldn't get it fired back up and going the right speed, and it ended up catching on fire, and he couldn't go anywhere. They had to throw the caution flag for that. You hate to see that for him, with as well as he has ran since he came back from his back injury. It's honestly been impressive, and wasn't running bad today, running about around where Denny was all day long. They were fighting for 11th and 12th, 13th all day long. And you just hate to see his day in like that, coming home with a bad finish. I think I want to say that's his first DNF since he's came back from the back injury. I could be wrong there, but I don't remember him having a DNF since then. And then after that caution, there's been so many cautions come out that NASCAR realizes we've got to get 100 laps in. We're not going to beat the darkness. There's no way we can run this whole race. And they changed the race length to 75 laps. I have mixed feelings about this. You know, the 9 cars that just had pitted could it totally changed the race for them. I don't remember all 9, but specifically you got Justin Haley, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch are 3 that I know of. That it just, Austin Dillon was also one of those that just, you know, basically won the lottery, if you will. They just had pitted, so they're like, okay, man, we can make it on fuel. Let's stay out front, and the other cars had to pit. So that's when I touched on Seabell. I think that's when he got screwed over. At the same time that he got screwed over, I don't think NASCAR had a choice. I think you could have waited until, you know, after everything cycled through or before pit stops began, to call it. I think that would have been better. But Seabell, who had dominated the race up until this point, gets screwed up and ends up back in the back and then makes a mistake trying to get back to the front and just ends up costing him his day that he led most of the race. So that's my opinion on the shortening the race. I don't think that's going to be something you see a lot. And I think this was just a crazy circumstance where, you know, we didn't get the race started till late because of the rain delays. You had caution after caution just for, you know, mostly the tire barriers. And then I think you got to make a call, and they made the call until it screwed some people and helped some people, which I will say SVG, who won the race, he was one of the ones that got screwed out of being up front and came back and won. So I will say that. I know NASCAR touched on that too. And shortly after changing the length of the race, the pileup happens. And it looked like a traffic jam on I-75. It was crazy. I expected this to happen in the race. I'm surprised it took it as long as it did to happen, to be honest with you. You know, William Byron gets into a barrier and stops, and then Corey LaJoie and Kevin Harvick are trying to go around him and not hit him. They end up wrecking, and then it plugs up everything. And then you have cars stacking up with nowhere to go, and that was pretty crazy to see. We had talked about this being a possibility of happening, and it did happen. So that was pretty wild to see all the memes about it and stuff, and it's pretty wild. After that caution, of course you had to call a caution for that because, I mean, literally nobody could get through the track. Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick wreck back-to-back after great days from both of them. Reddick led for a little bit after Denny had his mishap, and then Christopher Bell led most of the race. And you hate to see it for the Toyotas. They were fast all weekend long. Didn't get much out of it at all, to be honest with you. That really hurt. And then Austin Dillon, battling for the lead, smacks the inside wall coming to pit road, and then it jolts him over to the outside wall and absolutely messes up his car. And that was another caution. So, you know, he was one of those people that got blessed with the race shortening, and he had pit already. So he was trying to make a move for the lead. Why not? He was going after it and just made a mistake. And that's what most of this podcast has been about, is cautions, and that's mainly what happened. Martin Truex was another guy that had a rough day. I'm going to say him and Noah Gragson had the roughest days. And Truex gets in way too deep and absolutely runs over Kevin Harvick with 10 laps to go. And I think Truex hit everything. After coming off that win at the last road course in Sonoma, I figured, you know, he'd be better than he was today, or on Sunday, but just wasn't there for whatever reason. And then Bubba Wallace, this was into turn 1. I don't know if he had a brake problem or just overjudged it or what, but he went flying into he was going to hit the tire barrier in turn 1, but ended up taking Ricky Stenhouse with him. And Bubba and Ricky had decent days, and this was with 2 to go. And just a bad wreck. Bubba's car was really bad damage. Ricky's was too, and luckily those guys were all right. And it came down to, that was with 2 laps to go. So we go into overtime, and it's down to SVG and Justin Haley. And I want to touch on Stan Van Gisbergen. That's who SVG is. That was the winner of this race. He's drove supercars in Australia. Everybody says that, this new next-gen car is close to those cars. They're on a street course. So it was a perfect storm for SVG, but you got to give respect to the guy. He went out and earned it. He passed Justin Haley and pulled away, and they had a pretty good battle. Justin Haley stayed with him for a little bit, and then SVG was gone in the back half of the course. And he won it pretty convincingly. So respect the guy. First ever NASCAR start. And I will say they're talking about now you win one race, and they're acting like he's going to come over here full time in 2025. I don't know about that. We'll see. You get this guy on the oval. Is he even going to be able to compete with these guys? That would be interesting to see. And my respect level would go up for him a whole nother level. It's already up there since he won this street course race. But if he goes out, comes back in 2025 and outruns these guys on the oval, it's like, oh, okay, this guy's really, really good. So we'll see how that happens. And like I said at the very beginning, Chicago street course, win-win for everybody. Really enjoyed it. I hope you all did too. And now we're on to Atlanta, where anything can happen. Anybody can win this race. The mile-and-a-half turned super speedway. It's going to be a good one, folks, and I hope you all watch. And I'll be there in person once again watching. I love the new Atlanta. I went to both races last year. Didn't go in March of this year. And it was a good race earlier this year. I think we'll expect the same. And this weekend, going to be a night race for the first time at New Atlanta. Got a 7 p.m. Eastern start on Sunday night. So let's get into that. And thumbs up for Chicago street course. I think that Atlanta is awesome, to be honest with you. I'm a big fan of this mile-and-a-half super speedway racing. I know that this car would probably race great at the old Atlanta, but if they can figure out just a couple tweaks with this super speedway package, I think that super speedway racing will go back to being as good as it was. That's just my opinion. But I love Atlanta, the track. I've been there twice now, and I love it. And I think that, like I said earlier, this race is anyone's win. People are going to be desperate. The season is winding down. We're over halfway done now. People that don't have wins, especially if they're up there late. I mean, you saw last year, Corey LaJoie giving it his all to win this race last year. And he made an awesome move to clear Eric Jones coming to the white flag last year and got to the outside of Chase, and Chase blocked him into the wall. That was just very unfortunate. Ended up breaking Corey and him having a bad finish. He was so close. I've got no reason to not think that Corey's going to be a factor in this race again. Finished 4th or 5th here in March. I want to touch on him. I want to touch on Noah Gragson. Both of those guys. You talk about winning and shaking up the playoff picture. Corey wouldn't be as much of a surprise as Noah would be, in my opinion. I mean, Corey seems like he's got a knack for this place since they've turned it super speedway. And but I'll look for those two guys to be up there as guys that you normally don't see up there. And it wouldn't shock me if Noah's teammate Eric Jones was up there. He was up there last year, desperate for a win, not had the year that he's wanted to have either after winning at Darlington last year. Those are just some underdogs that could win this race. And I look at the Fords also. Ford has been pretty awful this year, except for at Atlanta. Atlanta, they dominated this race in March. You had Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric was up there. Blaney is always a factor at super speedways. I mean, he's always up there. And someone's going to have to beat Ford. And for that reason, my team to beat is Penske. And until someone decides to show up and beat Ford here, as dominant as they were in March, it's hard to pick against them. As far as team-wise, if you pick Penske, you've got the guys you've got Logano, Blaney, Cindric. Those the winner could easily come out there, and you're looking at Brad Kay, who is one missed block away from winning this race for RFK in March, and we're talking different. But until somebody can beat Ford, I think Ford is the pick here. And my race winning pick gonna be Brad Keselowski. And I just touched on that. One missed block away, I think he redeems himself and gets a win here. And he's already in the playoffs on points, but I think he wins. And I think it's a statement for RFK, who him and Chris Buescher have turned around, and they're running better and better. Both cars in the playoffs right now. And, if I pick the correct winner of this race, I'm going to go get me a lottery ticket after, because it's just, at super speedway racing, it's impossible to pick anyway. You'll see that. I mean, Brad Keselowski go out and get wrecked on lap 1. I mean, it's totally unpredictable. I don't want to jinx him. I think Brad K gets the win, but anybody in this field can win. This is one where your prediction, or my prediction, means absolutely nothing. I'm not confident in it whatsoever. I'm not. But in more important news, at least on my front, the Denny Hamlin Coca-Cola car is back. He raced it last year. We touched on favorite paint schemes a month or so back, when my question of the week, and it was the Denny Coke car. And it's back. I get to see it again, and that is super exciting for me. This year with chrome numbers is only slight change, so I'll definitely have to see it in person and get a picture with that car. That was exciting news that I saw. So now we are on to our question of the week. This week's question of the week comes from a certain listener that has listened from day one to this podcast. I really appreciate all my day one listeners, and I appreciate the new people that have listened to it, and a lot of them aren't NASCAR fans, but continue to listen, and I hope I keep them around, and that's awesome. I really appreciate that. And the question is, with the Chicago Street Course being NASCAR's first street course and being such a success, where do you see the next one being, or where would you want it to be? And I'm going to take that second part of the question and run with it. I have no clue where it would be. I'm going to give you my opinion where I think it should be. And that answer is Nashville. And IndyCar does it. Pretty much already have a setup. Like to see more passing zones than they have for IndyCar. But I think you can modify it a little bit and do that. Would that mean taking Nashville Super Speedway away is the only thing? I think you could have. I think Nashville could have 2 dates, and I mean the fairgrounds. I know they're working on it, trying to get it back up and going. That's going to be a while, in my opinion. So I could see like a little 2-year or 3-year deal until the fairgrounds gets done, where you could put a street course on the streets of Nashville, and I think the turnout for that would be awesome. I would like it to be a little less expensive to get in and watch it than the Chicago Street Course. That was pretty luxury to get in there. But make it affordable where the people of Tennessee, Kentucky, all the surrounding states can go and watch this NASCAR race. I mean, I was just in Nashville for the Nashville Super Speedway race. That place was packed. And I think they would do the same thing for a street course race, especially with how good of a success Chicago was. I think seeing a street course race in Nashville I would most definitely be there. I think that would be really awesome to see. I think IndyCar is awesome on. I don't really watch IndyCar, but I will flip it over if it's on and they're racing in the streets of Nashville. So I think other people would do the same. Chicago pulled massive rating. I think Nashville would do the same thing. And that is my answer. And just like that, we've come to the end of this episode. Once again, thank you. I keep doing this because of my love for NASCAR and the response I get from these podcasts. I have, you all reach out and talk to me, wish me well. And I really appreciate that. And just continue to like, listen, subscribe, review on Spotify and iTunes. That's another big thing. Give me a 5-star rating if you don't care. Right now, the show's ranked 5 out of 5. I want to keep it that way. And if you would just give me a rating of 5.0, I'd really appreciate that. And still selling T-shirts. Going to get another order together. I know of a couple people that want some. I need to actually get with, I need to get that order in. And you all, if you want one, get with me, text me, DM me on the Facebook page, or just get in touch with me. We'll get you all shirts. And I really appreciate all the support and continue to listen. And this has been another episode of JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. Until next week, thank you guys, and let's go racing in Atlanta.